Well, thank you. Welcome back, everyone. You're really in for a treat. Several years ago, we added an impact panel to the conference agenda. This provides us with an opportunity to remind us why we do what we do. OSEP has been working this year on looking at how we can assist states and locals in attracting, preparing, and retaining effective educators for all. For our impact panel, we will hear from two practicing teachers. Both are fifth grade teachers, one of my favorite years. One trained as a special educator and one trained in general education. And they're going to share critical skills and knowledge that they needed to be successful with their students. And that then we're going to hear from a brother-sister duo, and they're going to share their experiences. I'm going to share their bios of a couple of our panelists, but I do encourage you to look on your app for all of the details, as well as filling out your survey. I promised I'd get that in one more time. Daniel Sherlock is a special education teacher with the District of Columbia Public Schools. He also works as a research assistant at the University of Maryland College Park in cognition and development and bilingual and biliteracy research labs. He has worked for the past 15 years with individuals with disabilities in a variety of educational, clinical settings, as well as recreational settings. He has an undergraduate degree from George Mason University and a master's degree in special education from Vanderbilt University. Melissa Cosgriff is a fifth grade math teacher at Upper Marion Area Middle School, a St. Joseph's University graduate in 2002. Melissa received her bachelor's degree in marketing and began working in the business world. Then she realized she wanted to be a teacher. She went back to St. Joseph's and obtained her master's degree in education and earned her educational leadership certificate. As the school year begins next month, Melissa will be entering her 17th year of teaching. She has taught fourth, fifth, and eighth grade classrooms, but really found her passion in fifth grade.
Then we'll have Alex Lee, who just finished fifth grade at Upper Marion Middle School, has been 100% included at school since preschool. Since coming to middle school last year, he has made distinguished honor roll every single marking period. He has been doing the video morning announcements for the whole school and just having an awesome time trying to teach the world about the importance of full inclusion in middle school. At age 11, he already has an impressive resume that includes modeling for Toys R Us, doing a TV appearance on a Sprout show, singing opera in Italian on various stages, and speaking at the UN headquarters in New York City. Wow, at 11. Isabel Lee, thanks to her brother who continuously provides the most entertaining stories along with the most profound messages, has been leading quite an amazing life, getting invited to do keynote speeches at various educational conferences to just retell the incredible stories. The soon-to-be ninth grader has been advocating for inclusion for all students since she was 4 years old and doing keynote speeches since she was 11 years old. This young, naturally gifted public speaker has been having lots of fun in the past 3 years, making the audience all over Pennsylvania laugh and cry with her talks. She has recently been given the Good Citizenship Award by Senator Dalen Leach in Pennsylvania. Yes.
All right, so Ms. West mentioned the shortage of special education teachers, so here we are. My name is Daniel Sherlock, and I'm delighted to be here today to speak with you about my training and experience as a special educator. I'll do so broadly with a focus on evidence-based practice and how, for me, this approach has helped to ease some of the challenges that many special educators face. Before continuing, I'll define what I mean by evidence-based practice. Most would accept that, at a minimum, the term refers to the conscious use of a program or practice that has been empirically validated. This differs, as the special education researchers Brian Cook and Samuel Odom have noted, from similar approaches, such as best practices or research-based practices, in that supporting evidence for evidence-based practices must meet prescribed, rigorous standards along several dimensions, including research design, quality, and quantity. As it relates to special education, they conclude that in order for a practice to be considered evidence-based, it must be supported by multiple high-quality experimental or quasi-experimental studies, demonstrating that the practice has a meaningful impact on student outcomes. In short, these are what we should be using. Evidence-based practice, as you all know, is widely embraced by researchers and policymakers alike in the fields of education, public health, medicine, and other human services. In education, evidence-based practice is even mandated in the recent Every Student Succeeds Act, or ESSA, and its predecessor, No Child Left Behind. As the basis for this approach, we can fortunately draw from a large body of research from special education and its allied fields. From these collective efforts, we can indeed boast impressive achievements in understanding the complex etiologies, developmental courses, and treatments of many disabilities. As a course measure, for example, a Google Scholar search of the term dyslexia yielded no less than 278,000 results. Autism produced an astounding 1,330,000. This is remarkable given that 40 short years ago, little was truly known about either. However, too often there is a failure to pass along findings from basic and applied research to teachers and other practitioners. This research-to-practice gap, or perhaps chasm, is certainly well recognized, and addressing it has become a clear priority of government and private organizations. To this end, much has been achieved. As a target of these efforts, I can say how remarkably easy it is to learn about a wide range of evidence-based practices through a myriad of freely accessible, high-quality reports, guides, and websites. The What Works Clearinghouse, the National Center on Intensive Intervention, and Evidence for ESSA, for example, have all usefully cataloged and evaluated a large stock of evidence-based practices spanning a broad range of academic and behavioral domains. There's no doubt, however, that more is needed. A study in 2012 by Gabe and colleagues found, for example, that general and special educators lack the requisite knowledge to effectively implement evidence-based practices for students with emotional disabilities. In 2009, Burns and Yeseldike surveyed special educators' knowledge of evidence-based practices more broadly. Their results more prominently revealed frequent use among respondents of several evidence-based practices. However, they also found somewhat frequent use of ineffective practices. Many other studies have arrived at similar conclusions. This is representative of what I have seen throughout much of my career. Awareness and certainly adoption of evidence-based practice has been anything but universal. Teachers often appeal instead to professional wisdom. That is not to say that the two are mutually exclusive. Indeed, I know many educators whose professional wisdom is evidence-based practice. However, what I'm referring to is the common preference among teachers for the types of unvalidated programs and practices that pervade websites such as Pinterest and Teachers Pay Teachers. As stated earlier, much has been done to translate and make available information about evidence-based practices. Why then are these not consulted more regularly, or even exclusively, when making critical instructional decisions for our students? Many answers can be offered. As one, we can look to the research on the psychology of conceptual change. As humans, we are prone to trust our intuitive theories more than scientific explanations. This is why we cling to beliefs even when our data do not support them. We see this all too often in education. Many practices attract and stubbornly maintain widespread use even when there's no evidence of their effectiveness. Worse even, certain practices hold privileged status even when overwhelming evidence refutes their effectiveness. This is not to entirely discount the wisdom that teachers do accumulate throughout their careers. But as the educational psychologist Robert Slavin points out, there are millions of kids who are not succeeding in school, but could be if they experience proven programs and practices. How then might we better encourage and support special educators in adopting such proven programs and practices? Here I offer some of my training experiences. I was introduced to the concept of evidence-based practice early in my undergraduate training. I was easily sold on the premise that my instructional decisions should be guided by proven practices. However, it did take substantial time and effort to develop the skills needed to achieve this goal. This development began for me, like so many pre-service teachers, in learning about various accounts of human development. Here, my focus was directed to learning the basics of cognition, emotion, and motivation. This provided a solid basis for understanding the etiology and developmental courses of different disabilities. I cannot imagine, for example, understanding mathematics learning disability without knowing the architecture of the human memory system. Likewise, my understanding of autism spectrum disorder would certainly be impoverished without knowing about theory of mind. My knowledge is certainly uneven. Undoubtedly, I know more about learning than intellectual disabilities. However, my training was both broad and deep enough for me to understand the myriad cognitive factors that underlie individual and group differences in learning. My understanding of human development has also proven critical for focusing my instructional efforts to what the educational psychologist Drew Bailey terms trifecta skills. That is, skills that are malleable, fundamental, and unlikely to develop in the absence of intervention. These, Bailey argues, are prime targets for affecting long-term gains in students' learning performance. However, simply knowing what skills to target is not enough. We must also be masters of the content that we teach. And here's where I think we often falter. As work by Louisa Moats and colleagues has shown, for example, many early reading educators often lack the very metalinguistic skills that they're responsible for teaching. And despite receiving more formal mathematics instruction than their Chinese peers, Ma found that American educators often lack the profound understanding of elementary mathematics necessary to become accomplished mathematics teachers. Similar concerns have been raised about teachers' knowledge of science and history. These shortcomings have been addressed to some extent in recent reforms of learning standards. However, these alone certainly cannot compensate for when educators lack the knowledge they are supposed to teach. This was understood by my program instructors and resulted in the focus not only on learning strategies, but also core content in the domains, at least, of reading, writing, and arithmetic. I cannot overstate how important this has been. Beyond these general practices, I was also trained to implement specific evidence-based programs. This did not consist of passively reading from a script, reading the script from a teacher's manual, as many fear. Rather, I was trained to critically evaluate programs on the basis of their actual evidence base and content coverage. The vast knowledge and critical analytic skills that I amassed through these exercises has proven invaluable for matching interventions to my students' specific learning needs. However, our initial prescriptions are not always effective. This is a well-recognized feature of special education, and one that researchers have done much to address. Indeed, my training programs focus great attention to teaching us systematic and validated methods for monitoring students' progress in response to our instructional efforts, and for understanding when and how to intensify our interventions on the basis of these data. As with the other practices that I've described, this has served me, and more importantly my students, well throughout my career. With this said, I did not leave my teacher education programs with all the knowledge that I would ever need. Realistically, perhaps no training program can boast this achievement. However, my program succeeded in its focus on trifecta skills, those that were indeed malleable, fundamental to my practice, and that I was unlikely to develop on my own. In this way, my programs prepared me for effective practice from day one, and of equal importance, with the skills and motivation necessary for a career of continual learning. Armed with these skills, I've been able to deepen my expertise and even expand it into areas that I was never formally trained. I was, in the proverbial sense, taught how to fish. Teachers are often compared to medical doctors. This is done to elevate our practice to one of higher professional status. If it brings about greater respect and pay, I happily invite the comparison. However, few of us would seek medical treatment from a doctor who turns to Pinterest for information about drugs and therapies. I think that we should expect the same from teachers. Now, I have nothing against Pinterest as a source of inspiration for new bulletin boards, themes, or other creative ventures for decorating the classroom. But as is the norm for doctors, we must base our instructional practice not on traditional wisdom, but rather on science. Our students are certainly deserving of no less. In these remarks, I hope to have shown how my training programs prepared me with the skills needed to embrace and implement evidence-based practice. For many of you, what I discuss is nothing new. The experiences that I detailed are the cornerstones of many current teacher training programs. It should serve as a reassurance, then, that we are perhaps on the right track to improving how we prepare teachers to serve students with disabilities. But our work is not done. As results from the most recent National Assessment of Educational Progress reveal, we still have a long way to go to ensuring that students with disabilities are able to meaningfully access and succeed in general education. The time is ripe, however, for change. Although there is still much to learn, we now know a lot about what works and for whom. Indeed, there exists a large and ever-growing stock of evidence-based educational practices from which to draw. Furthermore, accessible information and high-quality resources for implementing evidence-based practices are widely available. The challenge going forward will be to create and expand environments that promote and sustain the use of evidence-based practice, both for new and veteran teachers alike. Thankfully, the group before me can certainly handle this charge. Thank you for your time.
All right, my turn. Good morning. So I'm Melissa Cosgriff. As they introduced in the beginning, I am a 5th grade math teacher, regular education. And so last week I was asked, I got a text from a very wonderful person that asked me to come and speak at this. And I was so hesitant. I actually ignored the text message for a while. I was gonna write back quickly, nope, sorry, got other plans. But there was like something holding me back and I couldn't quite figure out what it was. Then I remembered this TED Talks by Mel Robbins, and she says like, when you have like this impulse to act on something, you have 5 seconds to do it. And if you don't do it in 5 seconds, your body automatically pulls this emergency brake. And I thought, wow, this is great. I'm gonna wait 8 seconds and I'm never gonna go to this conference. And I just kept waiting and waiting, and all of a sudden I'm making dinner with my kids, and I look over and I see this book sitting on my kitchen counter. And I immediately walked over to my phone, grabbed it, and wrote the text, "Yup, I'll be there." The text back was nothing but pure excitement and gratitude. I knew I had made the right choice, but I was freaking out. I'm still kind of freaking out, just so you know. So one of the things I was asked to talk about today was what trainings had I received as a general education teacher that I thought helped me to serve the students with disabilities that I teach, and what do I think that all teachers need to be able to do? And I didn't really know how to answer the question, so I decided that I'm gonna just share a little story with you, and hopefully that'll help to answer the question. So here's our situation. It's the first week in June. You're sitting in your classroom. The administrator walks in and says to you, "Hey team, I just wanted to let you know that next year you're gonna have student A on your team." I'm sitting there going, why are you telling me this now? It's June and we don't get our class list till August. And what's the deal with student A? Why are you telling me this? And I look across the room in my classroom and I see my co-teacher, Mr. Curry, who's here today, and he's got this big goofy smile on his face. And I'm like, all right, dude, what do you know about student A? And he just starts rambling on, and he's so excited about student A, and I'm getting so excited about student A. And then he goes, oh, student A has Down syndrome. And I stopped and I said, what? Down syndrome? Like, I don't know how to teach a kid with Down syndrome. How does he learn? Does he know how to read? Does he do math? Like, my head was like spinning in circles, and I had no idea. I went home, and I'm just rambling on and on to my husband about the situation, and I was like, what am I gonna do? And light bulb, I know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go to Google, because Google has all the answers. So I'm like sitting at my computer looking up all this stuff, and I came across a quote, and the quote is by Melanie Joy. And it says, educating yourself does not mean that you were stupid in the first place. It means that you are intelligent enough to know that there is plenty left to learn. So this quote brought me some relief. I thought, okay, I'm not stupid. I can do this. I can figure this out. So I picked up the phone and called Mr. Curry and said, hey, can we set up a meeting with student A's 4th grade team? So we did. We went over to the elementary school, and we sat down in the classroom, and they started to fill us in on student A. And they were telling us all the wonderful things about Student A, and then they handed us 5 gigantic binders of data and information for us to go through. We felt like we were in a good place. We left the 4th grade classroom, went back to our middle school, and we sat down and we put the binders on the table and started to look through them and then kind of said, like this might not be applicable to us here in the middle school. We might need to rethink our approach. So it's the last day of school, all the other teachers have left the building, and Mr. Curry and I are still sitting in the classroom staring at these 5 binders, not knowing what to do. So we made the decision just to leave the binders there, and the 2 of us headed home for the start of the summer. Over the summer, we're really lucky. Our school district gives us time to meet as a co-teaching team for Flex. So we get the time to kind of reflect back on the school year. What were our strengths? What are our areas of improvement that we need? We have a bunch of different co-teaching strategies and models that we use. And we kind of just reflect back and we start to plan for the new year. So Mr. Curry and I sat down and we immediately just started talking about Student A. The only information we had about Student A was these 5 gigantic binders of connecting math concepts, which I've never used in my classroom before. And the verbal communication to us was that, I don't know, Student A might be on a 1st grade math level, maybe a 2nd grade math level. We didn't really know. So I went to the other internet genius, Amazon. Amazon's gonna help me this time. So I ordered 3 books, a 1st grade math book, a 2nd grade math book, and a 3rd grade math book. And I thought, Mr. Curry, great, here's our plan. We're gonna start in September with 1st grade math, and we'll try to set a goal of getting to the 3rd grade math book by the end of the year. Well, after the first week of school, we never even used the books. We never opened them after day 5, and you might be wondering, well, why didn't you open them after day 5? Well, it's because we finally met Student A. As the school year started, we're blessed to be in a co-teaching classroom, but we were also blessed to be given a paraprofessional, Ms. Schwartz, who's also with us today. So Mr. Curry and I sat down to try to get to know Ms. Schwartz, and we wanted to discuss our ideas and our goals and our expectations for Student A, but we were very honest that we didn't really know what we were gonna do, and we needed to take this day by day. As we started it in September, we quickly realized these Amazon books were not gonna cut it. This kid wanted direct instruction. This student wanted to be a part of our group. We started to observe him in the hallway. We started to observe him with the other 330 5th graders in the auditorium. We watched him. We decided that our expectations were not what they needed to be. We decided we needed to take just a little advice from Megan Baumgars when she tells us, don't limit me. We were limiting Student A before we even met him. We needed to find out for ourselves what he could do academically and what we could do to meet his needs. How could we make him feel successful with high expectations? And little did we know we were about to be blown away. As the school year progressed and our math teaching team of 3 worked together, we realized that we didn't need these Amazon books and we didn't need these connecting math concepts binders because Student A was gonna do 5th grade math. Yep, he did everything. Volume, area, multi-digit multiplication, long division, fractions with all the operations, decimals, expand, you name it, he was doing it. We knew that Student A had a strong desire to learn. We knew that it was gonna be hard, but we knew that if we worked together, we could do this. We just needed to come up with what strategies and techniques would work for him. So sometimes it might have been his iPad, sometimes it was his calculator, sometimes it was a highlighter and just organizing the place values and keeping them lined up. We talked about carrying a baby 1 when you did your adding with decimals, making the division problem look like a house. When he would do volume and we would circle the length, the width, and the height. Next thing we knew, Student A was sharing his strategies with the class. And there he is up at the smartboard, drawing and circling the length, the width, and the height, and saying, there's 3 numbers circled, it's 3 dimensions, you have cubic units. And the other kids were like, oh, okay, we can do this. It was fantastic. Student A was listening to my direct instruction, but then receiving like a mini lesson from Mr. Curry or Ms. Schwartz. And then he was doing practice problems and taking the exact same 5th grade assessments that everybody else was in the room. As the school year went on, don't get me wrong, we faced a lot of challenges, but as a team, we were able to tackle them. We're super fortunate in our district that they give us 45 minutes every day to meet as a team. They give us that time to collaborate, talk about what's been going well, what's not going well, what accommodations can we make. Every day we get that time. It gives us time to go and meet with our special education department chair and ask him for some feedback. It gives us time to go and meet with our speech therapist on certain concerns we might have, or our physical therapist about a posture exercise we might need. As we headed into the end of the school year, we decided we wanted to reflect back on our road, and we all smiled because we couldn't believe how we had gotten here. We didn't limit Student A the way we non-intentionally set out to do in the beginning of the year, but we let him lead the way. We let him show us what he was all about, and then we set the expectations just like we would with every other child in our classroom. We told him we expected him to go to his locker in the morning and get his books. We expected him to carry his books in the hallways and up the flights of stairs to music and art. Lunch, you're on your own, buddy. Like, you're independent. You can do this. We believe in you. What he needed was to be given a chance. What he needed was to be given goals and expectations that he could work towards. What he needed was to be believed in and told we would be right there if he needed us. So do I think that more training for regular education's teachers to meet the needs of students with disabilities? Like, I think that would be great. But I actually think what is more important is giving teachers time to collaborate together as a team. What's more important is the communication between home and school and working as an even bigger team. So yes, the training would be great, but we have to remember that every child is so different that we actually end up learning what is best as we interact with the student and really get to know them. So I'm going to close with a quote, and the quote is actually from Magic Johnson, and it says, "All kids need is a little help, a little hope, and someone who believes in them." As I reread that quote, I wondered, is it really that simple? I'm sorry. Just a little help, just a little hope, but someone that believes in them. We need all adults to believe in every student. I truly believe in this statement, and at the end of the school year, Student A gave me a book. The same book that was sitting on my kitchen counter when I sent the text that said I would come and do this today. And the book is titled, "How Did You Get Here?" And inside the book is a little note, and the note says, "Dear Mrs. Cosgriff, thank you for believing in me. I hope I can make you proud one day. Love, Alex." And I want to tell Student A right now, I believe in you, Alex Lee, and you've already made me proud in so many different ways. Thank you for making me a better teacher and a better person. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Alex Lee, and I just finished 5th grade at Upper Marion Middle School last month. And because my parents and teachers decided inclusion was the best way for me, I've been fully included since preschool. I'm only 11 years old, but my resume is pretty impressive. My sister would tell you all about that. So aside from having my own poster and having spoken at the UN, I'm really just an ordinary kid. I like watching soccer, playing video games, and just hanging out with my friends, just like everyone else in middle school. I love school, and I've had some very cool teachers who have become lifelong friends. And the one thing that all of these great teachers had in common was that they all believed in me from the beginning, and they never let my disability become an obstacle. I have been so lucky because I know that many students with disabilities have to do a lot to prove themselves before people start having higher expectations. I want to talk a little bit about my math experience. I have always heard that math is really difficult for people with Down syndrome, and so I believed that. But my 5th grade teachers, especially Ms. Cosgrove, Mr. Curry, and Ms. S., didn't believe that, and they were ready to try whatever it took to make me understand regular 5th grade math. The hardest part about math for me was to add and subtract in my head. I feel like I spent pretty much all my years at the elementary school just trying to somehow learn to add and subtract in my head. And my 5th grade teachers showed me how to use the calculator, and that changed my life. I try to still add and subtract simple numbers in my head, but for more complicated numbers, I just use the calculator. But the most important thing about the calculator is that it opened up the doors to more advanced math for me. I think the mistake that people make is to wait until a student masters adding in their head before they are given an opportunity to learn other things. I mean, I could have spent the rest of my life trying to add 12 plus 11 in my head. Now that I use the calculator as an assistive technology, I can figure out the volume in area of all different shapes and multiply fractions and get 100% on most of my math assessments. My teachers truly think that math is my strength. I used to think my strength was learning languages because I can speak, read, and write in 2 different languages, English and Korean, but I was always afraid of math. Now I think it's a lot of fun to memorize and apply formulas, which it turns out I'm pretty good at. But who knows? Without my teachers, I would have never known how good I can be in math. Even though I'm such a great summer, I'm excited about 6th grade and to take on more challenges. I'm looking forward to meeting more great teachers to help me achieve my dream of studying communications in college and becoming a really great public speaker. Now you get to listen to all the fun stuff about me from my my sister, Isabel. Thank you.
So, good morning, everyone. My name is Isabel Lee, and today I'm here to share with you my presentation, Zero to Hero, and who'd have thunk? So first, I want to start with a question. Who is Alex? Well, he's my little brother, but he also happens to be an academically recognized 5th grader who gets distinguished honor roll all 4 marking periods of the school year, and is also a human rights activist who speaks at the United Nations on behalf of people with Down syndrome. But to think that this all came about from a very rocky start. In the beginning, essentially, what we got was a baby and a piece of paper, and a very ominous-looking piece of paper at that. And when you look at this piece of paper, you don't exactly know what to make of it. But then you go in and read some of the things it says, like short and broad hands, or big toes widely spaced. And you get the feeling they're just writing down anything they can at this point just to fill up the page. And for the record, I'm still waiting for my brother's toes to space out. But, you can't necessarily blame the doctors when outdated manuals like this were being used for parents, teachers, and doctors too. And this book said that kids who have Mongolism will not even recognize simple numbers or letters until they are 12. And if you think about that, Alex has not yet reached the age of 12. Can you imagine what his life would have been like if he hadn't learned anything until the age of 12? He certainly wouldn't be here today. And just a quick fun fact about Down syndrome. People in the Western world called individuals with Down syndrome Mongoloids, but people in Mongolia called individuals with Down syndrome Westerners, so nobody wanted them. Thank God my parents were able to meet with Karen Gaffney and Rick Guidotti, who essentially told them, burn that book. My mom and dad heard Karen Gaffney speak when Alex was about 1, and they heard how eloquently she spoke about swimming across the English Channel and being the first person with Down syndrome to receive an honorary doctorate degree, that they decided Alex would be just like her when he grew up. And Rick Guidotti is a former fashion photographer who now almost exclusively takes photos for people with disabilities. And he's on a mission to replace medical reference photos with beautiful pictures of people with disabilities. And my mom and dad learned a very important message from him. Change how you see how you change. And that taught them that they wanted everybody to look at Alex the way that they saw him. And to back us up with facts, early intervention told us that over 90% of brain development happens in the first 5 years of a person's life. So no wonder they thought they couldn't learn anything. By the age of 12, you would have less than 10% to be working with. And so, when the doctors told us, oh, don't confuse your child with Down syndrome by teaching him too many things, we were so ready to confuse the heck out of Alex. We taught him music, we taught him fine art, and eventually, we confused him so much that he started reading before me. Now this was the biggest punch to the gut as an older sister. I mean, having your little brother read you Hello Kitty bedtime stories, and while you're feeding him. And we knew how to work with Alex at home, but school was a completely different setting. Thank God that along with the preschool anxiety came a whole string of wonderful teachers, starting with Mrs. Lett, who taught us that Alex learned best when he was surrounded by his peers and he was challenged academically. And so together, my mom and the team decided that inclusion was the best way that Alex would learn. And early on, my mom and dad would get confused at a lot of points, but they were so lucky to have so many great mentors and teachers along the way. And I remember one of their mentors told them, if you're ever confused, just think, would you have done it if Alex didn't have Down syndrome? Or would you have done it if it was Isabel? And that helped them make a whole lot of decisions moving forward. And we didn't just want to open Alex's options academically, but we thought, what about career-wise? So a modeling job at 3? Why not? And of course, with modeling, naturally, acting comes along. So, a 4-year-old TV star? Sure. But we didn't know what we were getting ourselves into because pretty soon he became a model in demand. And he was used on the same website twice, but then photoshopped to look like a different kid both times. And so with Alex's career options opening up, I was starting to think, what do I want to be when I grow up? Well, my mom had already chosen my occupation. Full-time in-house therapist. So whether it was a strategy or therapy, I was always there for it. And so even on vacation, I was never really on vacation. I remember my mom told me, Isabel, Alex is scared of water. We need a strategy. So while she lounged on the beach chair on the side, I was hard at work thinking of a strategy. And underwater conga lines seemed to work. Alex seemed to forget that he was even in water in the first place. And when kindergarten came along, Alex's friend Charlie would be coming over all the time. And I remember every single time Charlie came over, Alex was always reading to him. And I thought that was a little bit strange. So I asked Charlie one day, if you want to read a book next to Alex, we have a whole bunch of books I'm sure you'd love. And he says, oh no, Alex and Mr. Barlow, our teacher, are the only people who know how to read in class. And I was shocked. I thought these kids were already on chapter books. I had no idea. And so Charlie was so excited to tell me all about Alex's reading because Mr. Barlow always emphasized the strengths of each of his students. So he made sure everybody knew that Alex was the best reader in class. And that led to Alex reading to everyone from Senator Haywood to Secretary Rivera, the PA Secretary of Education, everywhere from the PA House Chamber to the Metropolitan Opera House. And even when he couldn't read, he was always telling people about this whole love for reading that he had, and it tended to look pretty impressive when meeting people like the PA governor, Governor Tom Wolf, and Senator Casey. And I get, reading to all the important people like Senator Tom Harkin, who co-authored ADA. But even the Pokemon guy, like the one who voices James and Meowth from Pokemon, seriously? But I guess it all pays off when you get, a personalized message from James and Meowth. And so with all this reading going on, naturally gigs come along as well. So pretty soon he's getting a personal invitation from Secretary Rivera, or maybe Pedro as Alex calls him, to go and speak at PDE's all-staff meeting. Now Alex and his confidence about reading is one thing, but then putting him together with my crazy mom, and it's a whole other thing in itself. They somehow let it slip that Alex loves opera, so they asked, well then, how about Alex sings opera? And my mom's like, oh yeah, sure, it's in front of 600 people, and he's not professionally trained, but what could go wrong? So he lets it go to his head, and before we go up on stage, he tells me, you just talk, and I'll sing Don Giovanni. And so he comes down from the stage, and he says, look, Mom, I'm gonna need a real opera costume now. So there he is, with his real opera costume. And this was at the EI Leadership Conference at Kalahari Water Park. And you know what he told me? Kalahari Water Park today, Metropolitan Opera House in 20 years. But despite his busy public life, Alex still finds time to enjoy doing STEM projects at school, hang out with his friends at Times Square and Arnold's Go-Karts, and enjoy going to the museums and to the opera. What a pretentious kid he is. And of course, there's Alex on the OSEP website with the US Secretary of Ed. Obviously, people of equal stature. And we also got the opportunity to meet with Madame Lejeune. And if you know Dr. Lejeune, he's the one that discovered that Down syndrome was caused by an extra copy of the 21st chromosome. And so this is actually his wife. And she came all the way from France for an event, so we decided to go meet her. And of course, Alex, with his big mouth, the first thing that he says going up to her is, oh, bonjour, Madame Lejeune. I did my hero project on your husband. So one thing leads to another, and a panelist in DC? How does that happen? And look at this picture, look. It's the leading scientist from the foundation, there's Madame Jerome Lejeune, there's David Lejeune, and there's Alexander. How does that happen? And even newspapers that covered the event, there were whole paragraphs just analyzing and picking apart what Alex said. So as you can tell, we were pretty busy that week, so we didn't necessarily get the time to study for his science test. And so when we realized the science test was that day, we were thinking, oh my God, what's gonna happen? Is he gonna fail his test? We were so nervous when he comes home with this 17 out of 22. And this 17 out of 22 was purely just from Alex sitting in the classroom with his peers and absorbing the information that the teacher was giving him. And in science, he didn't even have a para. This was just purely Alex being included. And Tristan A. Now, Tristan and Alex have been friends for quite a while now, and there's actually a funny story that goes along with Tristan. My mom was talking to Tristan's mom at a certain point, and Tristan's mom said, I never knew that Alex had Down syndrome. And she didn't learn from Tristan. She learned from Tristan's dad, who was attending one of our presentations. And so Tristan's dad texted her, and he's like, oh my God, I think Tristan's friend Alex, I think he's here and he's speaking. And so she's like, wait, what's so special about Alex? Why is he speaking there? And he says, oh, well, apparently Alex has Down syndrome and he does advocacy all over the place. And so she thinks, oh my God, does Tristan know? So she's trying to bring it up to him. And she says, so can you tell me about your friend Alex, Tristan? And he says, oh yeah, Alex, he's my best friend and we play at recess all the time. And so she goes a little further and she says, well, Tristan, is there anything special about Alex? And Tristan says, oh yeah, Alex, he's super good at rock, paper, scissors. I don't know how he does it, but he beats me every time. And so she goes and she says, well, Tristan, does Alex have any special needs? And Tristan says, oh yeah, Alex has this thing called Down syndrome, but it's like super cool. He has his own poster and everything, it's great. And it just goes to show that kids really don't care at all until they're taught to care. And pretty soon, my mom's getting this email, and it says, do you have a kid who deserves to be known and heard? And so she asks herself, do I have a kid who deserves to be known and heard? So there's Alex on the Philly Inquirer. And these days, Alex has become quite the self-advocate. Now he's going and bringing up issues that are important to him and sharing his personal story all over the Capitol. And now with his first pimples and his first mood swings, he's definitely ready for middle school. But on the other hand, my mom was not. She had this whole anxiety list. And all the things that she was worried about, everything from Alex, not being able to open his locker to the possibility of Alex not being cool enough for middle school. And so we did everything from locker practice to Fortnite practice, making sure that Alex was ready. And then comes Mr. Curry, Alex's co-teacher, who blows away everyone's worries completely. And one of the things that we discussed with Mr. Curry before the school started was Alex's math program. And throughout elementary school, he had been doing this Coraline program called Connecting Math. And Mr. Curry saw this and he said, you know what, I think for the first 10 minutes of class, we can be working on this Connecting Math, but for the rest of the time, I think he can be working on regular 5th grade math. So we give it a try. And Mr. Curry calls, and a few weeks later, Mr. Curry calls, and he says, Alex has been doing so good with math, I think he's ready for an unmodified test. And my mom's thinking, yeah, what, unmodified connecting math? but he's saying, no, it's unmodified 5th grade math. So we're anticipating the test results when he comes back with this 100%. And this was just, we couldn't say anything, but what the, how did this happen? It was the biggest mystery to us. I mean, how do you go from count how many crayons and all to explain how you found the volume? How do you make that ginormous leap? So we're asking everybody, we're trying to figure out how this happened. We're asking everyone who's known Alex, and one person who's known Alex his entire life says, well, I think it's because Alex has always been included all this time, and he's always been absorbing that information, but now he's finally gotten a chance to apply it. And as Ms. Cosgriff and Alex expressed, it's so important for kids to be where the lessons are taught. And of course, it was all because of all the teachers' wonderful work and all of their teamwork together, but assistive technology also made everything even better. And as Alex talked about how the calculator helped him, and even the iPad too, with different subjects doing flashcards and memorizing vocabulary. And so, of course, we're going everywhere telling people, oh my gosh, you gotta hear. So we're going to the PA Capitol building, and of course, we gotta tell our best buddy, Secretary Rivera. And if we're meeting Secretary Rivera, we may as well stop at the whole Pennsylvania Department of Education fan club, too. But just look at what a good IEP can accomplish with distinguished honor roll and all A's. And it really all happened because of the magic of co-teaching. And it was everyone in the team, whether it was Ms. Cosgriff, Mr. Curry, or Ms. Schwartz, or Alex. Everybody worked together to make a huge impact on Alex's academic career. And that also came along with the magic of friendship. This year, Alex has made so many amazing friends. But along with friends also comes the thought of bullies. And so we actually got a call from the principal one day, and he said, Mrs. Lee, there's been an incident in the 5th grade boys' restroom. So it was after lunch, and all the boys were gathered there. And there was one stinky stall, and one bad kid. They thought it would be really funny if they stuck one kid in the stinky stall. So everybody's sitting there after the bad kid is done, and they're chuckling nervously, not exactly sure what to do, when one brave kid with good intentions but really bad execution goes and tries to punch the kid who's locked the other kid in the stall. So there's all this commotion going around, and somehow Alex ends up on the floor. And so the bad kid says, wait, everybody stop, everybody freeze. And he goes and he helps Alex up and he says, look, I'm gonna have to take Alex to the nurse's office, but all of you stay right here, nobody move. I'll beat you all up when I get back, but I'll bring Alex to the nurse's first. And so Alex ends up in the nurse's office, and the teachers are trying to figure out what happened. I mean, Alex is in the nurse's, there were kids in the restroom, roughhousing. Did Alex get hurt? Did somebody beat up Alex? And so we're trying to figure out what happened. And so they start questioning people, and they question the bad kid, and he says, Alex, I would never hurt Alex. I love Alex. Why would I do that to Alex? And it would be great if all the kids looked out for each other like this. And of course, Alex is getting these thank you letters to the engaged citizen now from all kinds of people, including the governor and representatives. But of course, you can't be Alex without being a true Renaissance man. So here's him at the Museum of Modern Art attending the Creatability program. And here's his artwork being featured in an exhibit there. And that translated to extreme confidence in art class. So here you can see some of the things he's working on. And of course, being Alex, you also have to be a school-wide celebrity. So here's him doing his own segment, Ask Alex, on the morning announcements. And if I've learned anything from all of this, great teachers make great kids. And great kids go on to do great things. So here's Alex doing the closing remarks at the United Nations 2019 World Down Syndrome Conference. And there he said, education is a basic right for every person, including people with Down syndrome. And we've really come a long way. I mean, if you think about it, from 1974, when people with disabilities were considered burdens to our society, to now, when you could save $10 by bringing Alex's face into Toys R Us, except you can't because they're bankrupt. We've really come a long way, but we've got to keep it going. There's no stopping here. So I just want to end off with a quick question. What would you do? Now there's this kid, and he looks like he has some sort of intellectual disability, and he's looking up a tree, and he's going, puzzle, puzzle here, puzzle, puzzle here. So I want to ask, what would you do? And really think about it. What would you do? So here's a few options to make it a bit easier. A, you just ignore him. There's no point in having an interaction because he's not going to understand what you say anyway because of his cognitive delay. Or B, because he apparently has a diagnosis, you help him by correcting him. You kindly teach him that it's a tree by signing and having him repeat the sounds after you. Or C, by spending time with him, you realize he's obsessed with the movie Tangled and figure out he's pretending Rapunzel's way up in the tree and he's calling, Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair. Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair. Puzzle, puzzle, here. And, you know, this actually happened to Alex. This is a true story. And it's something to think about, maybe on your car ride home. And so, just to end off with a quick quote, one of my favorites, and it's from a bumper sticker I found somewhere. If you can read this, thank a teacher. So why don't we all go and thank a teacher? Thank you.
Wow. Wow. Just another round of applause for all of our panelists. Thank you again to our panelists. You've brought us full circle, providing us with a vivid reminder of why we do what we do, giving great examples of what's possible for all children and their families when we do the impossible, when we give the teachers and their leaders the appropriate supports and time that they need and the resources they need to make the impossible possible. And this means stretch. So the possible, I want to say another special thanks to Alex and Isabel. I also want to say a special thanks to the teachers for their time. We know that this is their summer to reconnect and re-energize, and the fact that they were able to come here and share their experience. So thank you very much. I think, Mrs. Cosgrove, I had that same experience when posed with the question to do something, and why I'm standing up here is because Renee, who put this together, said, Jennifer, I need your help. I'm like, yes. And then I was like, oh, what? So I am now able to close it down and say, I want to, while it's going to be a very tough act to follow, to close out our conference, I'm going to invite and we will warmly welcome OSER's Assistant Secretary, Johnny Collette, to the stage. Close it down. Do you need the clicker? Okay.